Thank you all for coming to Gabrielle Remington's capstone. Gabby has been a student of mine for quite some time, and actually I was thinking what comes to mind when I think about Gabby's work in my class. And the thing that really stands out to me was last year when I mentioned to students that they can do other things besides just print straight photographs. You can do things like you can scratch negatives, you can abuse your materials because it's analog materials, and you'll get a result. And Gabby took that completely to heart. She went outside with her negatives and she looked like she was putting cigarettes out underneath her feet. Those were her delicate negatives. And then she came back in and printed them, and dang, if they weren't really, really good. So these were artistically destroyed images that actually worked really well. So one of her characteristics is she jumps in and kind of is fearless about what she approaches. And as a teacher, that's just great. You'll love that attitude in students. So with that, she's going to share something that's very personal with her, but also she elevated it to the point of view where something that's personal is also culturally relevant or culturally informed. So with that, y'all,
I'm going to take lots of water breaks. I just hope you know, that's going to happen. Also, so the first couple of minutes, or whatever, I'm just going to introduce myself. Obviously, I'm Gabby. My focus is photography, as you know. I also love dance, though, and I'm doing a little bit of writing. It's not very good, but I'm trying it. I'm a TV show addict, and if you know me, I'm known for continuously quoting TV shows. Some of my favorites are probably New Girl, The Office, Parks and Rec, Arrested Development, many others. I love music, and my guilty pleasure musician is Shawn Mendes. I'm so ashamed that I love him, but I do. I don't even care. I'm the kind of person that gets super into things that I like. So if I'm interested in something, I dive right in and I try and learn everything I can about it. And I will talk about it endlessly if you will listen to me. That's also the quickest way to become my friend. So if you want to become my friend, just love what I love and talk to me about it. So I'm Oregon born and raised, and I have 2 older siblings. Yeah, if you have any questions at the end, you can ask more questions about me. Oh yeah. So last year was the first time in my life that I ever identified my feelings as lonely. I recently lost a lot of people, and not no one died. It was just someone moved away, and then there was an emotional distance and conflict with friends and stuff. So it was the first time in my life that I ever really felt alone. I didn't have anyone to talk to, or I just didn't feel there was anyone that was there that really cared for me. And so, but yeah, so that's kind of been a theme for my whole life, though. Not I don't have people, I do have people, but I just kind of always felt like the odd kid out. No matter how hard I tried, no one really liked me. But it was probably because I was trying too hard, so that's just another whole thing. And also, growing up, I wasn't bullied or anything, and I had friends. It was just more how I perceived my friendships and how I felt about my relationships at the time. So yeah, so at the beginning of this year, I had to take health too, because I wanted to graduate, obviously, so I had to take that class. And something we started talking about was cultures. And there was a girl in our class that was sharing about a cousin she had from Sweden that was visiting, and she was talking about how just something she noticed about her cousins, they were very physical, just with how they loved and touched, and they would get really close to you. And she was need a little bit of space, you're way in my face, And Mrs. Deal's response was something along the lines of Americans have huge space bubbles. She did it with their arms too. I don't just do it with my arms. So that just kind of got me thinking. I have such a hard time feeling close to people. I wanted to know if that maybe had something to do with my culture, and if that was related to how I was raised and where I was raised and everything. And so that kind of led me to my research question. That's how culture affects loneliness in people in different places. And so to answer this question, I compared the culture in Japan to the culture in North America. And so I'm just going to start with what loneliness is. So loneliness is a feeling of being unwanted, empty, and alone, but still craving a human connection. This feeling is not exclusively related to being physically alone. Loneliness is a result of feeling disconnected emotionally from one's surroundings, friends, and/or family. So through the analysis and comparison of different cultures and their effect on people within them, it can be seen that loneliness is a large contributor to the downfall of social structure. So here in North America, we have a very individualist self-centered culture, and people within individualist cultures tend to think of themselves as separate and independent from a group. People in these cultures tend to identify themselves with words such as strong, self-reliant, assertive, and independent, whereas people in collectivist cultures use characteristics such as being self-sacrificing, dependable, generous, and helpful to others. Relationships within individualist cultures also tend to take an independent form. They are thought to be freely chosen and entail relatively few obligations. So this means someone may consider a lot of people friends, but because there's no obligation to like stay committed and be friends, the friendship can fizzle out or never deepen. And the whole purpose of relationships is to be known intimately and connected with people, but if people never deepen their friendships, they never achieve that feeling of intimacy and acceptance. So they will feel lonely. So taking a water break. So here in North America, uniqueness and being different are what gives values to individuals. So the worth of an individual and their uniqueness is validated when membership is granted into a community by the individuals that comprise the group. Basically, that just means we try to fit in with groups that have a similar kind of uniqueness as us. And like being rejected from one of these groups can cause unwanted or self-inflicted isolation. So people will suffer from loneliness. The study of the cultural groundings of personal relationships, friendships in North American and West African worlds, compares friendships within North America to those in West Africa, and explains how the culture in each place has affected these friendships. For example, let's say there's a town in West Africa and there's only one guy in this town who sells eggs. Everyone is going to be friends with the one guy that sells eggs because they all need eggs and they have nowhere else to get them. Therefore, all their relationships with him are going to be based off their need for eggs, or like family, you know. In individualist cultures, friendships are seen to be freely chosen relationships that often involve spontaneous acts of affection. So the idea of a friendship being based on a material need would be seen as ingenuine. Like, for example, I have a car. Say Natalie's only friends with me because I give her free rides in my car. That'd be pretty like, whoa, Natalie, you don't care about me emotionally? Just be like, whoa, you know? That's not a genuine friendship. The dissertation stated that people in North America often seek 4 things from their friendships: companionship, emotional intimacy, self-disclosure, and self-expansion. This companionship and intimacy are the defining aspects of our friendship. West Africa has a collectivist culture and therefore values community and interdependence. Being able to help and mutually benefit each other with resources is seen as an ideal. The study stated that because these West Africans have a community and a purpose, they are less likely to feel lonely. People in North America generally are not taught to value community or family to the same degree, but they still desire a place of acceptance and a purpose. It can be very challenging to find a community, especially when there's no obligation, such as survival, to keep a community together. North Americans feel lonely when they are unable to find communities they feel accepted or valued in, and when they lack these intimate friendships. So in 2018, Cigna, which is like just a health insurance company, conducted an online survey surveying more than 20,000 U.S. adults using the UCLA loneliness scale to further examine loneliness in America. On a possible loneliness scale ranging from 20 to 80, the national average was 44. The results also revealed that Gen Z, adults from 18 to 22, are the loneliest generation, and the greatest generation, 72 and older, are the least lonely. So Gen Zers report loneliness at 48.3, while the greatest generation scored 38.6. So if you look from left to right, this diagram goes through the generations and their scores. And I just found it really interesting because if you move from right, the loneliness scores get lower while the ages go up. And so, I don't know, it was just kind of fascinating to me that like, so many people assume that the older people are going to be more lonely because they're older and they can't do as much and like people are dying and you know. So it just makes sense. But like this totally shows the opposite, and even as you get younger, the scores get higher. So I just found that really fascinating. So they found that more than half of Gen Zers identify with 10 out of the 11 feelings associated with loneliness. So even when looking at this diagram, it's interesting to see that the greatest generation is so much less lonely than any of the younger generations. That led me to question, why is the oldest generation in the U.S. the least lonely? The Cigna U.S. Loneliness Index found that the lonelier people are more likely to have infrequent in-person interactions. So the big difference between Gen Z and the greatest generation is the emergence of technology and the internet. Technology connects people from all over the world, but people are having less and less meaningful in-person interactions. Texting, phone calls, and even FaceTiming don't offer the same intimacy and connection that face-to-face conversations do. Even with inventions such as food delivery and online shopping, the amount of face-to-face interaction people are having is becoming less and less. So before the internet, if someone wanted milk or pre-made milk, they had to go to the grocery store or had to go to a restaurant. Like you had to interact with the cashier or fellow customers. It was just like interpersonal talking with strangers. And we as a culture are losing the ability to do that. So one example from my own life, I'm sure. So one example from my own life, when I first got my license and I first got my car, I hated getting gas. Like, because we have to like have the people pump our gas, so we can't do it ourselves. But like the fact that I had to like talk to the guy and like, I know it's ridiculous, okay? Like I just hated doing it. I was like, no, I'm gonna avoid getting gas as much as I can. And just like, I feel like it's rude to roll up your window while you're waiting for your tank to be filled. So I always leave my window down. But like, what if they just talk to you? Like, it's just, I hate it so much, okay? And so, I don't know, it's just like, as I was doing my research, I just realized that like, I'm a Gen Z. And interpersonal interactions give me crazy anxiety. Like that one example, you know? And so, like, the good thing about it, the more that I do it, the less anxious I feel about it. And the more I'm like, it's no big deal. It doesn't matter. Just pull out your phone and they won't talk to you. Just kidding. That's the opposite point of my capstone. Don't listen to that. So yeah, but like as kids are growing up with technology and texting, they become reliant on this form of communication and they never learn how to handle social situations. This is a large contributor to the rising amount of social anxiety in Gen Z and millennials. So according to an anxiety epidemic among millennials and Gen Z, it's estimated that over 5 million college students suffer from anxiety disorders. Technology offers unlimited connection, but it does not offer the companionship or intimacy humans need in order to feel accepted and loved. It makes sense that Gen Z is now named the loneliest generation because many of them lack meaningful in-person friendships and the ability to make them. Also, I'm sorry if you're feeling attacked. Like, that was not my goal. Like, I felt attacked. Like, don't even, yeah, okay. So now that we've looked at North America, I'm now going to look at Japan, who has they have a very different culture. So Japan is a collectivist country and is influenced by the Confucianist religion. So Japan shares the ideal of strong family from the Confucianist religion as well as in the importance of education. Japanese parents treat the education of their children as an investment in the prestige and wealth of their family in the future. The importance of education puts a lot of pressure on adolescents to perform. Psychiatrist Hiroshi writes that this is one of the contributing factors to the rising number of hikikomori in Japan. Hikikomori think of themselves as worthless and unqualified for happiness. Almost all feel remorse at having betrayed their parents' expectations. The Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare defines a hikikomori as someone who does not communicate with anyone outside of their immediate family and who doesn't have a job or go to school for more than 6 months. Another important part of Japanese society and culture is conformity. Vasat, a hikikomori himself, shared a common saying, if you are a nail sticking up, usually you are hammered down. Many hikikomori begin pulling inward during adolescence or after college because that's when like the most pressure is put on them. Obviously in school there's like the pressure of all the school, but also after college if you don't find a job right out of college, there's this huge shame of like you're never gonna make it. And so yeah. And loneliness is not only affecting the young, but it also has a large impact on the older generations within Japan. Japan is experiencing a population decline and is the fastest aging nation in the world. More than a quarter of the population is over 65, a figure set to rise to 40% by 2050. A contributor to the population decline are the lifetime singles, which make up 20% of Japan's population. Many young adults are choosing to focus on their careers instead of creating a family or simply have no time for dating. Their cultural landscape is changing because the more people in Japan that are choosing to age alone, the less intergenerational families there are. Intergenerational families used to be the norm, but these family structures are rapidly disappearing. 1 in 3 Japanese marriages end in divorce, and couples that do stay together are having fewer children. Japanese culture puts a lot of importance on success in school and the workplace. But oh my gosh, sorry. I talk really fast now. I can feel it, sorry. Because of the enormous pressure, many of these adults are choosing their professional success over a family. An effect of these large amounts of people choosing to be alone is the occurrence of lonely deaths. A lonely death is where usually the elderly lie dead in their apartments for long periods of time before being discovered. The overall number of people who are alone is growing, so it's inevitable that the number of people who are dying without anyone's support is also growing. It's estimated that 30,000 people die lonely deaths in Japan each year. These deaths have become such a common occurrence in Japan that there have been companies developed to clean out these apartments after bodies are discovered. So, yeah, I know, right? Sorry, this is, yeah.
Oh my God.
15% of elderly men living alone have fewer than one conversation in 2 weeks. Japan is struggling, their population is aging and dying off at an alarming rate, and their young people are choosing social isolation over the pressures of school and the workforce. The culture is not to blame, but it plays a large part in the lives of these Japanese citizens. The US is not yet in an aging crisis like Japan, but culturally, North Americans are kind of hardwired to be independent and in a way lonely. This independent culture, coupled with technology, has the potential to breed even more loneliness. And the results from the Cigna survey indicate that the US Gen Zers are headed in a similar direction as Japan. Loneliness is a real problem worldwide. Loneliness is not just the feeling of being sad and alone, it's an epidemic that has the potential to change the course of an entire nation and their century-old social structure. Loneliness is quickly becoming an everyday symptom of life, but it doesn't have to be. Learning about its causes and solutions are essential to the health of citizens in every nation and culture. So obviously I'm a photographer. I've said that a lot. So for my portfolio, for my topic, I didn't want to just photograph like cliche people looking sad and like looking out raining windows and like, because that's just cliche. We ain't about that. So I did a series of photo essays instead, which means I interviewed a bunch of different people and then I photographed them and, oh wait, should I change my slide? I should probably change it. That's me again. So I interviewed a bunch of different people and just wanted to get their own experience with loneliness. Because of the results of the Cigna survey, I tried to get as wide a range as possible. So I got 2 18-year-olds, a 30-year-old, and then a married couple in their early 60s. And so it was just something I felt like I really liked about it, was even like just speaking to the 60-year-old couple, like they both shared that they rarely ever feel lonely. And one of the things that the guy said, his name is Steve, he was like, the only way to get old is to have friends, because because if you're happy, you're going to live longer, So it was just kind of funny. But then even like talking to the 2 18-year-olds compared to the older couple, they were both like, the 18-year-olds were both like, yeah, I feel lonely all the time. So it was just kind of a funny comparison that like supported the results of that survey. So if you are interested in that, that'll be in the foyer tomorrow. You should check it out. I'll be there to answer questions and everything. What I think I learned from my research, and I hope you take away from my capstone, is the importance of getting face-to-face time with friends and family. There's nothing wrong with texting or spending lots of time on social media, but if you can only speak to your best friend through a phone, something's wrong. True vulnerability and acceptance happens in face-to-face conversations. So I encourage everyone in this room to take 5 minutes a day where you can put the phone down and have a genuine, honest conversation with another person. Thank you for coming to my capstone. Hope you learned
Are there any questions?
I just would like to notify you that you're a good person and I love your photography.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So I do have some,
I have a question. How has your research impacted your perception on your personal relationships as far as being a Gen Zer and being somebody who's, like, even by your own admittance, kind of really into TV shows? Really, has it impacted how you want to structure your show?
one of my TV shows. All
Right.
Like I kind of explained, it started out with how I feel kind of disconnected from people, and I think a lot of the reason why I feel disconnected is because of the time I'm raised in. Also my personality. I'm just kind of closed off until you anyways, so I think how is my research impacting, or how do I
do you want to do you feel like it's caused you to think about, gosh, I really want to make conscious decisions to be a little more disconnected from the phone,
I think
disconnected
so.
from and more connected with.
And I think using your phone in a positive way. So not just texting all the time, but being you free to hang out? Because you can text someone and ask them to do that, instead of just texting for hours and hours. Because, you know, I feel like it's super easy to get like open and honest with someone through a text message. So there's no like tone of voice, there's no
When you were learning about these different cultures, what had the biggest impact on you? Like, what facts really stood out to you?
the lonely deaths in Japan. Like, oh my gosh, you don't even know. I read so many sad articles that were like in-depth like interviews with people that are like older people in Japan that are like living alone. I cried a lot during that research, but yeah, so that was probably like the thing that impacted me.
And how did that compare with your research from West Africa?
So, well, there was only one study I found about West Africa. I tried to do 3 places because I was gonna do more on West Africa, but there just wasn't anything else. And because it wasn't a specific like country or like tribe or anything, it was kind of hard to like get specific research. But like, I don't know, just it seems like people in West Africa got it figured out. Like just they have closer communities and they don't have technology getting in the way and they just rely more on each other, which I think is a big difference than what it is here in North America.
Well, as someone who's lived in West Africa, you did a good job explaining it.
Oh, thanks. Did my best.
Was there a time in like your photography career where you saw a large growth in yourself and your art?
Oh yeah, probably sophomore year, because that's actually when I started doing the scratching and everything, and that was the first time I really took a big risk, like really started experimenting. That's sort of where I figured, like that's more my niche. Like I don't like digital photography very much. Maybe because I haven't done it very much, but I just don't like it because I don't feel like I can like manipulate it in the same way, and it doesn't have the same quality to it. So definitely sophomore year, because that's when I started experimenting a lot more.
I was wondering, how has this project and the research you've done affected your plan for the future project?
Okay. So well, my plan for the future, I'm planning on going to college next year in Montana. I know, who wants to live in Montana? Just kidding, it's a really good school. But I want to do photojournalism, but I want to do specifically like, what are they called? Features, I think, or like more research. This is me bright blue, that's not a good look. Sorry. So, well, yeah, I don't know, just doing this, it made me realize how much I really like the research aspect of things and like less like political like news of what's happening right now, more of like research on like bigger picture things. So I'm going into journalism, photojournalism, so we'll see where I go with that, but hopefully more research kind of stuff.
Do you think there's any causes of loneliness in Gen Zers other than phones?
Definitely. So literally, if you guys want to look up the Sigma Index survey thing, they have like a huge, and they talked a lot about how like loneliness is really, it's just about balance. It's like people that worked too much were lonely, but people that didn't work enough were more lonely. If you sleep too much, you get really lonely. If you don't sleep enough, you get lonely. So it was more just like, that was like one of the other big things I like that was in the survey was like just balance in life and like, you know, yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything specifically for Gen Z though. Like that was more just like general results. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Gabrielle.
I sort of organized them, so like the front one is sophomore year, this one is mostly junior year, and this one is mostly senior year, except for like this one picture of themselves, so you can look if you want, yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.